If you have a child that is currently receiving special education services, or if you have just been introduced to the term alternative communication, but you're not sure what it is, my goal in this video was to give you some basic, easy to understand information for you parents that are tired of the professional jargon. Stay tuned for more on this video. Hi guys, welcome again to one more video. My name is Barbara Fernandez. I'm a speech language pathologist. Before we get started on today's topic, please remember that if you want to see more videos from me, click the subscribe button to be informed when I release new videos. First, I want to tell you guys why I recorded this video about alternative communication for parents. My son receives special education services, and ever since we started our own journey with our family, I have been blown away at how often professionals use jargon and vocabulary that is so hard to understand for parents. Sometimes I wondered, do they know I'm a speech therapist? This is information that I hardly ever disclose to the therapists. Sometimes I don't want them feel uncomfortable or intimidated that I'm a professional myself, so I try to hold on to this information. But it really gives me such insight on how parents might be arriving at such completely different conclusion because professionals are using a ton of hard to understand vocabulary and tons of professional jargon. So my goal today is to talk about alternative, or sometimes also known as alternative and argumentative communication, in an easy to understand way for parents. What is alternative communication? As the word says, it's an alternative way of communicating. Think of it as you're driving, you set up your route to go somewhere, and you know that there's a traffic jam. You need to find an alternative route to get to where you want to be. In this case, where we want to be is communication. We want to express ourselves in a way that people are understanding what's going on in here. For children that are having difficulty expressing themselves verbally using their own voice, professionals have a way of using an alternative or a different way or different route to let them express themselves. It's a very creative way of allowing people, sometimes little people, to express themselves. Think, for example, if I could no longer speak and I didn't want something, I could say, I couldn't say, but I'm gesturing. And you know what that means? It means no, I don't want something. Sometimes kids will be able to nod for no instead of saying the word no. But communication is a lot more than or. There is tons of words, tons of different meanings and concepts that we use to express our thoughts, wants, and needs. And that's why professionals are going to try to find something that is a little more refined and complex to allow children to communicate. Sometimes they might use sign language as one way to allow your child to communicate. And there are various different ways that I want to get to it later of different types of alternative communication, but just think of it as a different way, a different route to allow our little ones to communicate and express what they have going on over here. Why are professionals now recommending alternative communication or a form of alternative communication to your child? There could be multiple reasons, but just like I said before, the goal is not necessarily speech, but we always need to think about communication. That's the most important thing, is to make sure that the child is able to communicate. And if they can't do it with speech, we need to find an alternative way. Sometimes it could be because your child has autism, so they're going to be nonverbal. It could be because your child is struggling with apraxia of speech, so even though they do have speech, it's just not easily understood by others. Even though you might understand your child well, maybe other people are having difficulty understanding them. In this case, this is why the word argumentative communication might be used, is even though they do have some communication, we are augmenting or we are supplementing that communication with a way that allows them to communicate freely with anybody out there. Another possibility could be cerebral palsy or some other developmental delay or some other syndrome or difficulty that they're having that is underlined, that is preventing them from communicating using their voice. Now, there are also many different types of alternative or argumentative communication, and I believe the speech therapist that is currently assigned to your child might be the best professional to give you an appropriate recommendation based on your child and your family dynamics on which form is the best form of alternative communication. We already talked about one type, which was sign language. Sign language can be used to supplement that speech, or in the lack of speech, they can be used as a way for them to communicate without speech. You can have signs like more, like no, and there are individuals that are hard of hearing, that are deaf, that use sign language as an extremely efficient way of communication. Another type of alternative communication is written language. Sometimes this is used for older kids or sometimes adults that already are able to read and write. So let's say that you're not interested in watching this video for a child, but maybe for a relative that had a stroke or for some reason lost their ability to use their voice. So they can use written language as a way of communicating. Sometimes also kids with autism use written language, or they can just write, or they can use an app on an iPad or a mobile device as a way of an alternative communication. Sometimes these devices actually, they would type in a written format, but the device will speak out loud for them. A third type, and sometimes the ones that you see depicted the most in other YouTube videos, is picture symbols. What that means is you have a picture of something to represent the object, the real life object, or sometimes to represent various concepts like verbs and adjectives and nouns, and that picture represents what they want to communicate. In a simple sense, let's say that my daughter wants to tell me that she wants water. I can print a picture card or a picture symbol of the word water. So it could be the picture, and there could be an associated word with it so that everybody knows what it means. And once she hands me that picture of water, she doesn't need to say water. I know exactly that she wants water and not milk. Picture symbols can also be used with all the different types of technology we have out there. So there's a combination of what we call AAC devices, alternative and argumentative communication devices. There are some dedicated devices, so there are manufacturers out there that created these devices specifically for communication, and they're loaded with symbols in a way that it doesn't limit communication for that child or that teenager, that individual, so that they can communicate anything that they want. These days, we also have a ton of different apps for iPads and mobile devices that are also used as alternative communication devices or AAC apps. You can also look up on the App Store for a variety of different AAC apps. What are the benefits of using an alternative way of communication? We talked about this a little earlier on the video. Imagine that you went to a foreign country that you can no longer communicate with people. That would be extremely challenging. If you're watching this video, you probably have developed your own way of communication. It could be a spoken language, a sign language, or you could even be an AAC user, an adult AAC user. But you have currently established a way of communicating with the world. When you think of these children that are trying to express their wants and needs, they become extremely frustrated because you're not understanding what they want to say. So right there, AAC or alternative communication, or creating a way for this child to communicate, will significantly improve the child's ability to express themselves and reduce all of that frustration. It's also known that alternative communication also can help the development of speech in the future for that child. Finally, I do want to talk about some myths that you might be wondering yourself. You might have some fears about initiating a form of alternative communication for your child. And sometimes it could be natural things that you might be thinking about alternative communication. One of the fears that I've heard in the past from parents and other professionals that discuss these things all over the internet or conferences is the idea that if a child starts using an alternative way of communication, they're no longer going to want to speak. They're not going to want to use their own voice. That is a really big myth, and in reality, the opposite really happens. A child that is learning to communicate, They didn't know that they could actually control their environment using communication. Once they know that if they give a picture card, they receive a water, if they make a sign for more, they actually get more of what they wanted, they start to have more control and understand that it is through communication, that it is through that exchange of information, either through speech, through pictures, or signs, that we interact around the world. So that actually benefits the child. It doesn't hinder his speech whatsoever. Another myth that I've heard it very recently is that a child is not ready for an alternative communication. They have to have certain cognitive skills or certain attention to be able to initiate alternative communication. So this is a big myth. Don't wait. The sooner you start teaching your child to communicate, the better. The professional that is working with your child should be able to develop those skills that they need to be able to communicate and express themselves in an effective way. And the third and last myth I want to talk and address today is sometimes we tend to think that if your child has some speech, if they're trying to use their speech to communicate, that they don't need AAC. But there is a reason why the professional sometimes recommends the AAC for kids that actually have speech. Apraxia of speech is one of them. So sometimes a child can use their speech, but they are really hard to be understood by others, which also could generate loads and loads of frustration. So if they can supplement that speech with a picture symbol or some signs, you would be able, or even written language, you would be able to understand what they mean much easier, much faster, much more effectively. So even though your child is speaking, even though they're using speech, while your speech therapist is working on that speech production, they can at the same time have an effective way or a slightly more effective way of communicating than their current state of their speech. That's it for today, guys. I hope you found this video beneficial to you. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button down here and subscribe to my channel. I hope to see you next time on another video over here.